Well, welcome to the Needham League of Women Voters first event of the 2025-2026 season. My name is Ellen Soderholm, and I'm the president of the Needham League. I'm happy that you came, and I would particularly like to welcome any new members who are here. If we have any new members who joined during the summer or the fall, could you raise your hand? No? It looks like we mostly have old timers. Well, that's great. We welcome you here. We're glad to see you again. We are looking forward to a conversation with Needham's new town manager, Katie King. Welcome, Katie. And I would also like to welcome our friends from the Needham channel. This program is being recorded for broadcast in the coming weeks. If family or friends could not attend, please tell them to look for it soon, either on the Needham League's website or on the Needham channel's website. As is our custom, tonight I want to acknowledge the traditional indigenous people who lived in this area when the European settlers arrived. Let us remember today that we are gathered on the occupied territory of the Massachusetts and Pawtucket peoples who stewarded this land for generations. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Membership in the League is open to men and women of all ages. The League is active on the national and state level, but this evening we are focusing on the local level, on Needham. There's a lot going on in town, and people have different interests and priorities. As an icebreaker, I would like you to turn to someone sitting near you, hopefully somebody that you don't know. Introduce yourself and share with that person what you think is Needham's greatest challenge these days, and what is Needham's greatest opportunity. This is just an icebreaker. I'm not going to ask you to make a speech or anything afterwards. It's just supposed to be to get to know somebody new. So find somebody new, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Please go ahead. Okay, I hope there was enough time for you to find somebody new to you, and exchange a few words about Needham's greatest challenges and opportunities. In speaking with some of the people around you, perhaps you found that you have some ideas in common with the people sitting near you? Or maybe you found you have differences of opinion. Getting together to talk about issues facing our town and exchanging perspective is what the League is all about. Now I would like to introduce our moderator for our conversation this evening. Vicki Krupp is a Needham League of Women Voters member whose career has focused on her love for writing and educating and empowering young people to reach their goals. She's a curriculum developer at ListenWise, a company that supports literacy skills, and a mentor with the Multicultural Mentoring Program at Massachusetts Bay Community College. Vicki is also the author of the Book Club Cookbook. Vicki will start our conversation with Katie King with a series of questions developed in collaboration with the Needham League. Vicki will then open the floor to your questions. So Vicki and Katie are in position, and I'll ask them to start. Vicki, would you start by introducing?
Yes. Thank you so much, Ellen, and welcome everyone. Welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Before we start with questions, I want to share with the audience a little bit about your background. Before coming to work for the town of Needham, you spent 6 years with the city of Boston, working under both the Menino and Walsh administrations. You started in Needham municipal government in 2020. You can correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, but this is what I've got. As deputy town manager here in 2020. When Kate announced her retirement, you applied for the town manager position and were selected by the select board, who interviewed several candidates. You are now the second town manager in Needham's history, managing town departments and the town's approximately 400 employees. So I want to start with the basics. For people who maybe are less familiar with town government, some people are more, some are less. I grew up in Newton where we had a mayor. That's a different model. And so I'd like you to start by just telling us about the role of the town manager in Needham. Are you like a mayor? Are you like the CEO of a company? Are you the operations person? Tell us a little bit about the role.
Yeah, great. Well, first, hi, good to see everyone. I see familiar faces, but I see some new faces too, so that's wonderful. And thanks, Ellen, to organize this. And to the library staff, I have to thank my team. They're amazing. I was thrilled when this was scheduled here in this building because I just want to be in the library all the time, actually. Your question to me was, what's the job?
Yeah, what's the job?
So the town manager job really, the select board is your elected leaders that set the policy direction for the town. My job as town manager, I'm appointed, as you mentioned, by the select board, and I am the chief executive officer under the charter, but really I'm like the chief implementer. And so the select board sets the policies. That could be annual priorities and particular initiatives each year. And I oversee kind of all the town staff to realize those priorities. The management is making sure we're just delivering core municipal services every day effectively, and then advancing the kind of additional special projects each year to address kind of evolving community concerns. Just moving the work forward. So that's a sense of the role.
Can you tell us like a day in the life of the town manager? What are you doing sort of on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
Yeah, there is no typical day. It's a lot of variety. That was true in my deputy town manager role, and it's actually one of the things I really enjoy, just the constant variety. So I'd say like what I'm doing at any given moment is kind of falls into three buckets. It's a lot of internal facing things, a lot of meetings on project management, budget, collective bargaining agreements, personnel matters, stuff to support the staff. And then the second bucket of work is really boards and committees. I obviously work directly with the select board, and so they meet every other week, and it's really a constant cycle of implementing the votes they just took at their last meeting and then planning for the next meeting. What do we need to have in place to prepare them, to give them the information they need to make decisions? And that kind of cycle is ongoing. I directly support the select board, but you all know Needham has more than 50 boards and committees, appointed, elected, and so there's so much going on any given night, and I end up attending other meetings depending on what the agenda item is, if it's a really important project, or just checking in annually with different boards and committees. And I'd say the other kind of thing that fills my day is community events. So things like this. I was thinking about this week. We had an excellent Veterans Day event. I'm not sure, there's some nods. It was really cold, but it was really a thoughtful program and a really nice moment for me to take some time and reflect. There's tonight, and this week we also had a visit from Congressman Auchincloss. He came to the Center at the Heights, did a tour around the senior center with us. So that's the sort of thing that is kind of filling my time.
And how do you and the select board interact with town departments like police, fire, DPW? What's that relationship?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I kind of hire and supervise all town staff. There's exceptions. I don't oversee any school staff. That's entirely the superintendent's role. The other exception in the charter is the executive secretary of the finance committee is hired by that committee. But aside from that, I do kind of all the hiring and supervision. And so that includes police, fire, DPW, and all the other town departments. But those three are our largest in terms of total number of employees, budget, capital and operating budgets. So my interaction with them is hourly. So just working with the team to make sure that they have what they need to accomplish their goals, their work plans, and those departments, unlike, it's maybe kind of more apparent where we have our planning director as staff kind of reports to me supervisory, but the work plan of our planning department staff is really set by the planning board. You know, what, looking at a former member, what zoning amendments are going to be on the agenda for that coming year, and what the priority projects are. It's set by the planning board, but I oversee the team from a personnel perspective. Police, fire, and DPW, actually, their policy direction and oversight is the select board. And I think maybe that's not an obvious connection, but the select board does traffic regulations, and they approve parking regulations and ambulance rates, and really championed the building of the public safety building, Fire Station 2. So they really are the oversight board for those departments.
Got it. You came here as deputy town manager from a big city, from Boston. What did you find was transferable to this town from that, and what did you find was not, you know, what was new and surprising that you couldn't, you weren't expecting as much?
Great question. Transferable definitely is like at the core of government from my perspective. It's all relationships in terms of how do you work with your staff and your team, how do you get to know community members. We have so many boards and committees, and in Needham, my role in the city was I was the director of intergovernmental relations, and so I really was the mayor's person, liaising with the city council, with our state elected officials. Maybe I should move this down. Federal delegation. And so in that role with the city, it really was working with a lot of different partners to accomplish a shared goal, or sometimes we did not have shared goals, and it was navigating that, and how do you kind of reconcile when a city or state interest is conflicting. So just the skill set, I think, of like needing to have communication and understanding where people are coming from, that's completely transferable to my current role here. And just creating policy from scratch, understanding like what's the concerns of the community, what are the levers that government have, do we have a bylaw we can change, is this a budget issue, is it a staffing situation to address. That's the same city or town. So the thing that was the big change is just getting used to town governance and town meeting and the calendar. So the opportunities for policy change under a town form of government, and you know, I'll know this well, but you know, town meeting only meets twice a year. And so from a staff perspective, like everything you want to do policy-wise or budget-wise, you've got to line up on a very set schedule. In the city council met every Wednesday, and it just was kind of always churning. And so the windows of opportunity to get things done weren't quite as, they were more flexible under the city model, and under the town, if you kind of don't hit a deadline, you could be months out, you could be a year out until something's kind of ready to advance again. So it's just a different approach, and now that I know the system, it feels like second nature, but my first town meeting was at Memorial Park in the parking lot. And it's the first one I've ever attended, not just as an employee, but ever in my life. And I was floored. I was like, this is, I mean, everyone says it's like the most pure form of democracy still, and I like experienced that. And with such a high level of appreciation, like it's really an amazing thing to watch and see play out. So I learned it, and now it feels second nature.
But
Yeah.
you have to be organized. You have to organize your.
Much more planful.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of cuts both ways. You have to really think ahead and really be planning. It also makes it more challenging to be nimble when circumstances change. You don't have as much kind of flexibility to pivot.
Yeah.
So it's just pros and cons.
What do you see as the big challenges for Needham going forward?
Good question. And I'd be curious, you guys just chatted about this, but, I was thinking of like particular initiatives, but then I really, because Ellen said this might be a question, I really think it's more thematic things. So volatility at the federal level is a huge challenge kind of for me in my role, in the sense of it makes planning very difficult, and kind of thinking about economic headwinds, what's happening in the federal government really translates down and impacts the state, and then that impacts us. And so trying to, there's no crystal ball for that, but you try to kind of plan for it and try to understand what might be the implications locally, but that's certainly challenging. I think just general distrust in institutions, in government, maybe in each other is a huge challenge. And the way I see that play out is people either choosing not to engage at all, or engaging kind of with a starting point of a level of cynicism. And so that can be challenging to make sure that people really want to plug in, that people want to engage, that they come, productively and with an open mind. That can be challenging as well. And not just for me, but I see it's challenging for if different community members want to engage in an issue, but then they come into a space that maybe is a little bit tense. That's maybe not a place you want to stay if it's your first time kind of leaning into civic engagement.
Have you seen a change in that over the years that you've been in government, in terms of the tension and all, or has that been consistent?
That's a good question. I mean, I do feel like it's been increasing, but it's hard for me to unpack. Like, my role has also changed, and so obviously I'm in a leadership position now, and so kind of my perspective has also changed. So it's hard to understand what is shifting with everyone else versus what's changing for me. Another challenge, I pair these together, but recruiting and retaining municipal employees is a big challenge. So government is like, your services are delivered by people. Most of our budget is people. You turn on your faucet because there are people that make sure that the water system is working and you have clean water. And so it's all people driven. And, we're public sector. We have, only certain levers to recruit and retain and employees. So that's a challenge. And I would pair it with the high cost of living. In Needham, but just in the region. So we have employees that are living further and further away. That's challenging for us operationally, and just challenging to make sure that we have the workforce that we need to provide the services that you expect and deserve. So that's a challenge, and obviously the cost of living, it's housing's the biggest piece of it for sure, but it's everything to housing to groceries and everything in between. So,
one of the challenges I was curious if you were going to mention that I perceive is communication. I guess just as a resident, I'm speaking as someone who sort of sees signs about, envision Needham, which I'll ask you about in a minute, but not going to get away without that question. But I understand a little piece of it, and my neighbor understands a different something about this project. And I'm just curious sort of how, what do you see as the most effective way to communicate with residents? And do you have suggestions for how communication might even be improved?
Yeah. I don't know the best way, so if anyone wants to throw out what's most helpful. But if you're not signed up for News You Needham, that's the town's newsletter. It is the single best way to get a sampling of all of the things happening in town. Strategies that we have undertaken that I think have helped a lot is we have a communications director now. And when I first started, there was a kind of a position for a public information officer that had been funded on a pilot basis, basically, and then ultimately Town Meeting brought it into the operating budget, and now it's just such a core function, and actually having one person, like the communications need is so much greater even than that capacity of that one individual. So we have people in every department that are doing communications. But strategies is challenging. I'd say things that we struggle with, that I struggle with, is not creating our own white noise. The volume of events that are happening, activities, town boards and committees, things that we think that residents would want to be interested in, the volume is so high that we struggle with like how to even dole out the information in a way that is accessible and people can consume it. And also it's hard to know, you might be interested in these 3 things, and then you're interested in a different set of 3 things. And so I think we live in a world of algorithms and customized information, and like I don't have the ability to do that as the town, to customize like what you receive from me. So that's something that we struggle quite a bit with.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you about 2 divisive issues the town has recently faced. Sure. The MBTA community zoning and the Envision project. What are some takeaways that you have from those issues?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'll start where we just left off, communications and community engagement. I think one of the lessons for me on the MBTA Communities Act is, I staffed the Housing Needham working group that really advanced the ideas that ultimately went to town meeting, and we did so much thinking about community engagement and, townwide postcards and community forums that had 300 people at them. And, in the middle of it, it felt like we had done some really good outreach work, communications and engagement work. And fast forward kind of to the end, I also did hear people and heard from people directly that said, I had no idea this was going on. I don't know what is happening. And so for me, the lesson is like both things are true. We did a lot of really great things, and there were still people who weren't plugged in. And plugged in, people will always plug in whenever they do, right? And so part of the challenge is how do you kind of pull people in when they are engaging and catch them up to what's happened, from what happened before they got engaged. So MBTA Communities Act, I think such a good example of that for me. And housing is a really challenging issue. Zoning is really challenging. It's so personal. What are you doing with my property? What's my neighbor doing with their property? It's just really, people have strong opinions about it. So I think it was a challenging conversation for the community to have. I also think, we're about to have a redevelopment at 100 West under that new zoning, and it's going to really kind of revitalize a site that's been vacant for so long and provide some really needed diversity in our housing options for folks. So, that's the zoning made that possible.
Yeah, can you talk more about opportunities you see for Needham coming up?
Generally, or?
Yeah, generally.
Yeah.
The big opportunities that you see coming down the...
Yeah, I think when I think about opportunities, some of it's projects and some of it's like what assets do we have as Needham that make opportunities possible. And for me, I think of people. Like I think of town staff that we have, board and committee members, just like a lot of really thoughtful people that commit a lot of time and energy. So it's an asset, but it's what makes the opportunities possible. Opportunities, Pollard, I'm going to say. It might be on somebody's list as a challenge, but actually, thank you. It's a complicated project, and it's really going to be a huge community conversation. It already is, but it's just such a huge opportunity for the next generation of Needham students, and it's the next big thing ahead of us. And so, to me, that's an opportunity. What are we going to do? How do we make good decisions around that project? Other opportunities, since I started this triumvirate of stormwater, trees, and large house topics, it was, I felt like I had heard it coming from the community, concerns, questions, wanting those things to be priorities. My view only goes back to 2020, but those conversations started before that. And I think there was always interest from the relevant boards in town to tackle it, but there's always other competing priorities. And so I think for a long time it just didn't get to the top of the list, but now all three of them are. And the town has working groups to advance what are kind of policy proposals around stormwater, which passed at the October special town meeting. But large house review is probably up next, and trees after that.
Can you be a little more specific about those issues?
Sure.
What you're referring to?
Yeah. So for stormwater, you know, it's a much broader, it's a very broad issue, but specifically we updated the stormwater bylaw that puts more stringent requirements on new construction and how do you have to manage stormwater on site. And, you know, from the August 2023 flooding events, you know, we came out of that with a whole list of things that we need to do as a town. Updating that stormwater bylaw was one piece of it. The town will have to make investments in our own infrastructure. That's another piece of it to just better manage. We're having higher intensity rain events than we ever used to have, and our systems just aren't built for that. So that's, I guess, a couple of specifics on stormwater. Large house review, you know, really this idea that people feel like the community is changing when a smaller home is torn down and a much larger home replaces it. And what are, I think, part of the work that committee is doing is that a problem? And what about that is a problem? And then what are some policy solutions that might get at that? With trees, that's a huge topic, but I'll just say narrowly, there's some work around, again, maybe some policy work for a bylaw of, are there, right now we don't have anything that regulates if a property is clear cut of trees for new construction. I know that's an area the committee's looking at. So just important topics that are all kind of linked to each other, and I think there are opportunities because they've been on the list for a long time, and I feel like we're finally kind of getting to a place to move them forward.
That's great. I didn't know those were topics.
Great.
Fantastic. Well, I have one more question I'll ask you now before I open it up, and then I might have a few more. When it comes to town government, what do you wish people knew more about?
Oh, goodness. This is so wonky, but my job is so wonky. I wish people knew like the actual rules because it's so not how the private sector operates. It's not my experience in the nonprofit sector. So just our charter and our bylaws, the governance side of it, you know, rules we have to operate by, constraints we have, like it's such the boring stuff, but it's usually the reason that drives like why, thank you, the municipal attorney believes it's fascinating. But, you know, in terms of, I wish people knew about it because it just shapes so much of when somebody comes to government, to me, to a board or committee member, to a town employee and says, why can't we do this or that? Our answer is always embedded in that context and the structure within which we operate. And so if you don't have a shared understanding of what that structure is, then it's a lot harder to understand why the answer is yes or no or maybe or yes, but in 18 months. Like nobody wants that answer. But so I wish people knew that. I also wish people knew how awesome our staff are. They're like so passionate about what they do in every department, and I just there's so much community pride in Needham, and I have that pride in Town of Needham staff. So I wish people knew their DPW plow driver, you know.
Well,
so maybe like know. Your mail delivery person.
Yes. All right, I'm going to take a moment and open it up for questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, we'll bring around a mic.
Of course. G. McKnight.
Precinct F.
You mentioned recruiting and retaining municipal employees as being a challenge, and I was sorry to learn that our relatively new building commissioner, for his own personal reasons, I understand, has decided to move on. And that is such an important role in the town. The building commissioner interprets our zoning bylaw, which isn't an easy one to interpret. It's one of these iterative bylaws that grows over time. And then, of course, the state building code and the recent changes of the state building code to address environmental issues. How is that coming along, finding a new building commissioner?
Great question. Thanks for that. For anyone who, Joe Prondak's our current building commissioner, and he had his retirement party this morning. So he has only been with Needham for a couple of years, but he has been a local building inspector for 38 years and a commissioner for 19 in Needham and another community. So he has a well-earned retirement ahead of him, but definitely a loss for Needham. So the job is posted and we're recruiting, but I would say it's going to be challenging, and not because of anything specific to Needham. The pipeline for that profession and that industry overall for all communities is very challenging. A lot of the skill set is construction background. And so we really are competing with the private sector construction industry for that role. So definitely challenging, and we have had vacancies recently in the local building inspector positions in that department. We have been hiring people that have not been a building inspector in the past and training them up, which is great, and it's something we can do here. But that pipeline then just isn't in a place it needs to be statewide, frankly, for finding those top positions. So we will throw everything at it that we've got, and to get a good person for Needham, because it's a critical role. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Catherine Memry. You mentioned the Pollard Project earlier, which was, of course, music to my ears. How would you see the town supporting community programming in the new auditorium that we anticipate to be included in the Pollard Project?
Yeah. I think in two ways. So one of the conversations around the auditorium is use for like private use, like rental of the space. That is not something that we currently offer in town. And frankly, at this point, it's a conversation of what are the rules around that and the legal restrictions. And again, this is very wonky, but how we bond for projects. We're a nonprofit and we bond as a nonprofit. And so making sure that we can understand the obligations under our bonding requirements to have the use extend beyond to rentals. But more broadly, I would say there's so many community groups in Needham, and there's so much activity, and we offer town buildings for a lot of uses, and the increase since COVID has been kind of constant. There's people always looking to rent or use space in all of our buildings. So that's handled by our building maintenance department, and for both towns and schools. And so I think I see it just as a core part of our work to kind of do the logistics side and figure out how do we have custodians available and schedule and coordinate. So I think anything that we build, we want to be well used. Yeah.
So I do see the signs for Envision Needham in the town, and I'm not really familiar with what the issues are with respect to that. So I would love a little information.
Sure. So Envision Needham Center is an infrastructure project for the roadway Great Plain Ave, basically from Pickering Street to Linden Street. And, infrastructure projects really are driven first and foremost by what do we need to do underneath the ground, drainage, and on top of the ground, public safety, pedestrian safety improvements to the infrastructure. And obviously it's in Needham Center, so the signalization of all of the various lights and how they talk to each other and how they talk to the railroad crossing at Great Plain Ave. All of those things are from an engineering perspective and a DPW town staff perspective is what drives an infrastructure project. And redoing that stretch of Great Plain Ave has been on the town's list for many, many, many years. And so Envision Needham Center is, basically, if we were to rip up the road to figure out drainage and do the other pieces, when we put it back, what do we want it to look like, and kind of how do we want the limited right-of-way that we have to serve all of the various interests in town? So that could be, how do we move traffic through? Do we have bike lanes or not? Are we expanding the sidewalks or keeping them the way they are? And this has really evolved the conversation pretty quickly, even in the 5 years that I've been here. The initial designs we had was keep 4 lanes of traffic and make no other changes. Then we had the pandemic, and all of a sudden we had outdoor dining everywhere. And a lot of interest to make that kind of institutionalized in Needham Center. And right now we have parklets that are on the street with Jersey barriers. Like, we've painted them, but like, it's still a Jersey barrier. So there's been interest of, well, what if we had expanded sidewalks and could have those amenities and some more placemaking? So the select board appointed a working group to basically work through various options of how many lanes of traffic do we have, and then what real estate is left for the other things, and how do we balance the trade-offs of those. So that's kind of the work ahead of the Envision Needham Center working group, and ultimately the select board will make a decision about kind of which they think is the best option to move forward.
So what is it that the stores are opposed to? They say we.
Yep. So the concerns really were about the proposal. One of the early proposals was to go down to 2 lanes from 4 lanes, and to add bike lanes, which also had impacts on on-street parking. And so the concerns were largely from a lot of the business community in Needham Center, being concerned both about losing parking, but also about it not providing enough throughput for traffic, for vehicular traffic, with the lane reduction. So the working group right now is working on a 4-lane option, a 3-lane option, and a 2-lane option. So everything's being explored.
Hi, Katie.
I can't.
The League of, Karen Price, Precinct F. In 2009, the League of Women Voters did a study on the Stephen Palmer building. And we did it then because we were concerned that the deadline was approaching, that when the ground lease would expire in 2027. So being that we are 2 years away from that, what is the town doing now?
Great. So there's kind of 2 sets of efforts for those of you who are not town meeting members. At the October special town meeting, we asked for funding for an agreement with the current owner and management of the building, Stephen Palmer Associates, to wind down the residential use of the building. And that agreement was both kind of what are the roles and responsibilities of the town versus the current Stephen Palmer Associates for the coming months until the ground lease expires. And it was paired with financial assistance and relocation support for the existing tenants in that building. So that's one set of the work for Stephen Palmer. The other set is really a community planning process and a visioning of what does the town want to see on that site. We're exploring kind of the building and its current conditions so that we understand options relative to preserving it, reinvesting in it versus demolition, but then ultimately what's the use of the site. And there's a committee put together to advance that conversation with the community to think about what's the use. Is it housing? Is it open space? Is it a community center? Is it something that I haven't named? and go from there once there's clarity from the community about how we want to use that asset that's coming back to the town. The Stephen Palmer building is on the corner of Pickering and May Street, kind of behind St. Joe's School, next to the playground in Greensfield. Yep, it's a former elementary school.
Quick question for you, Elizabeth Handler. A quick question for you. You obviously have learned a great deal about Needham, and you're putting so much time and effort into Needham. What are you doing for yourself? This is getting to know Katie. What do you do for yourself to relax, to sort of get your mind off of all the wonkiness that you seem to enjoy?
Word you said, relax?
Relax, yeah? Okay, then you need to go back and figure out what that means, because you probably need it.
I know. Well, I was just mentioning that I got married in June. And so I got married. We had a wonderful honeymoon. And then I came back, and Kate and I overlapped for, I think, 1 more week. And then I started my new job. And I haven't seen my husband since. But no, I'm joking. But what do I do to relax? I read. I'm an avid reader. I like to run. My 5K schedule has really plummeted recently, though. Yeah, just family and friends. I have 2 dogs. Their names are Holly and Harry, and they bring me like immense joy. So I definitely am trying to figure out the balance of time. We joke that in government, it's like daytime government and nighttime government. And in my job, I do both. And that's like probably not sustainable without kind of some relaxation built in. So part of the learning curve for the job for sure is figuring out, how to fit it all in. Yeah. Thank you for that question, though. Appreciate that.
Anyway, hi, I'm Julie Korostoff. And if you like just pie in the sky, do you have some kind of vision or wish that you could make for Needham? You know, if you think like 10 years hence, is there something that you'd like to see us accomplish as a community?
Oh, interesting. I don't have a particular outcome. I guess I would say like preserving what I think of as all of the great things. Really, there's so much community engagement and pride in the community. We, like I said, boards and committees, there's more than 50 of them. We interview volunteers and have to pick who to put on them because they're like not competitive, but that does not happen in every community. I talk to my peers in other communities all the time, and a lot of them, actually, I was talking to one the other day, they just dissolved a committee and just stopped doing a level of work because there wasn't interest in the community to have volunteers. So local governments run, local departments are run by staff, but local governments run by volunteers. And
Can you give us an example of some of the committees you're talking about, like what are the committee and volunteer
yeah, sure.
activities?
If you're interested in any topic, we have a committee for you. So we have a historic committee, we have Arts and Culture Council, we have climate action, we have mobility planning, on and on and on. Like literally any topic, there is a seat for you. So I think my vision is like, what is so great that we should collectively preserve. And I think it's that like community pride and engagement and really a level of thoughtfulness that people bring to all the work. I see it from a government perspective, but I imagine it's all of the nonprofits in town too. It's community, not just government. So, good question, thank you.
So back to the what do you do to relax? Did you grow up around here? What's your background?
Yeah. I grew up in Sutton, which is outside of Worcester. Fewer than 10,000 people. And, when we said we were going into the city, it was Worcester, not Boston. My family's history is completely intertwined with Sutton's history, like back to its founding. So a lot of really, family pride in that town. And my mom was a special education teacher, and my dad was the local real estate broker in town, and I think he sold everybody's house at least once in his lifetime because it's a small town. I think he sold some houses twice. But so that was kind of my life growing up, and I went to Boston University for undergrad, and like a lot of students, I went to Boston for college. I never left, so now I've been a Boston resident for 23 years, and that's, yeah. I am a New Englander. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I get a lot of questions. People assume I live in Needham. Not necessarily folks in Needham, but people in my life who have no idea what my job is. Most people in my life do not understand my job. But they're like, "Do you have to move to Needham?" And I'm like, "No, I can stay where I live." And yeah.
Good evening, David Rushka, Precinct I. What is a word or phrase specific to your profession that only somebody in your profession would know, and what does it mean?
Oh my gosh.
There's so many, right?
Oh my gosh. That only the profession would know. I mean, I'm thinking of like Prop 2.5, but people know that. Jean, help me out. Only people. We have so many acronyms. CBAs, collective bargaining agreements. I have never gotten that question.
One more fun one if you want to do
Yeah, great. I failed on this first one. Try again.
What is a word or phrase that strikes fear in a town manager?
Oh, yeah, I don't know who just said that. A word or phrase. The text of, can you call me? Urgent. It frankly is it, because it could be anything. So for example, we had a fire in a town building this week, and everyone's fine and the structure is fine, but any given moment, hey, do you have a minute? Could just be, want to chat with you about this professional development opportunity, or it could be, we had a fire in a building and we have to evacuate everyone. So I think the striking of the fear is like at any given moment, it really could be anything. So.
Well, the audience has asked some excellent questions. Thank you. Is there anybody we're missing? We have time for one more audience question. Go ahead.
May I, Jean McKnight, ask another question? Because this is something I've been interested in for a long time. And the select board and town meeting have been very supportive of the establishment of a quiet zone, and have worked on this, hired consultants, appropriated money, but the MBTA is not responding, apparently, to our initiative. How do we break through that? Is anybody working on that? Is there anything we in the community should be doing to get that MBTA to step up?
Good question. So there are open lines of communication, and we are talking. So let me put you at ease, I guess, with that immediate response. The quiet zone, if anyone doesn't know, it's a way to change the infrastructure at all of the at-grade crossings at May Street, Rosemary, Oak, Great Plain. I didn't go in order. West Street, should have just gone down the line. But a way to change that infrastructure so that it's a way that the Federal Railroad Administration would allow the operators of the train to not sound the horn every single time. But you have to meet certain safety standards to have that be possible and to get designated as a quiet zone. So it's an interesting project because it is federally regulated, locally driven, that we want this, and at this point it's been locally funded to design those infrastructure improvements, but the people who actually own the property is the T, and the people that operate the system is actually the T's contracted vendor, which right now is Keolis. So you're starting just from a place of a lot of jurisdiction. So it just, in my mind and experience, just means it takes more time. So we are talking with the MBTA, trying to understand, I think, two things, which is how do we get the level of information about their infrastructure so that we can design the project? And that's just, again, detailed, wonky engineering things. But it's an important piece of the puzzle because we want to design to their standards, to their current kind of as-built. The second part is, though, when we're ready and we have a design, how do we actually do this? How do we coordinate? How do we have a license agreement? If we build on their property, are we liable for something that's damaged? Are they liable? You know, over the lifetime, you know, what's the insurance impacts? What's, you know, so all of the technical things. So that's where we are right now with the T, is trying to work through those questions largely that we have and asking them to give us clarity about what the path looks like moving forward. So when we have clarity on that, we'll be able to come back to town meeting and say, you know, here are all those specifics about what really would we be committing to if we decide to construct the changes that are needed. And then town meeting would be able to decide if that was something that you wanted to do.
It's good news, they are engaging.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let me wrap things up with one more question for you. First, I want to say this was such a delightful conversation.
Thank you.
So nice to hear your thoughts, and we can really hear your passion for the job, which I just loved to sense. And I just want to end with asking you sort of what you find most rewarding about this work. Clearly you love it.
Yeah.
What do you find rewarding about it?
People, first and foremost, just working with thoughtful people, staff, volunteers, but there's a lot of complicated challenges in front of every community, and Needham's no different from that. But I think I get motivated by the energy that other people bring to meetings and bring to events and all of that. So that's motivating. And, you know, when I was interviewing for the job, you know, the question came like, well, why would you want to do this? Why do you want the job? So people were at the top of the list, but also it's just really meaningful work. I really, public service is a calling and a passion for me. And so this is an opportunity to do that in a leadership role. And we started with what the typical day is, and the breadth and the variety of issues that I get to work on is also just really motivating. You know, one meeting's about climate, and then it's housing, and then it's transportation. I'm like, how cool is that? So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was really very nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Katie, for coming and spending this time with us. I know that I learned something, and I think I speak for many people here, that they learned something about you and also about how our town government works. So I appreciate it. And thank you very much, Vicki. It was wonderful to have you in conversation with Katie, and you made it a very pleasurable evening for all of us. So thank you both again. Before you leave, I just want to let you know about an upcoming Needham League of Women Voters event. Please reserve the evening of Thursday, January 15th, for the Needham League's annual Winterfest, a combination potluck supper and planning meeting. We gather in January to share a meal and hear from our members about issues you feel the Needham League should address. Members will receive an invitation via email, and information will also be in the monthly bulletin. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. Good night.